All good. I see that almost everyone has joined. So others who have not joined will just find us along the way. So welcome to the policy training titled Youth Engagement in Agricultural Policy Processes. We have told you about this training in the previous meeting that we had. So we are going to have two training sessions. The first one is the one that we are having now, and it will, roughly end in about 2 hours or so. And the second one, which is the last one, will be next week on the 31st of March. I will also send a calendar invite for that, but I have also sent an email for that as well. Um, so the purpose of this training is for you guys to understand what policy is, just the basic processes of policy and the cycle, that policy making takes. And most importantly, to understand where you stand or where you are when it comes to policy making things, especially agricultural policies. So the person who will be taking you through today's training is Dr. Rachel Mkandawire. Dr. Rachel is very, very knowledgeable when it comes to policy processes because she has been working in this space for quite some time. And not to forget, she is working in FANAPAN, which is a Pan-African policy institution. And we work across 17 different African countries, influencing policies in those countries as well. So this is honestly the best place to learn about the policy processes, and you guys are super, super privileged to actually be learning from the best of the best, from the experts of Fanapan. And without wasting any more time, actually, let me just roughly take you through today's how today's training will go so that you have an idea. So we'll have Dr. Rachel who will come and like explain all of the things like policy processes, how policy making is made, and the stakeholders involved and all of that stuff. And after that, we are going to have a very important session where we'll have breakout rooms with groups of you guys where you will be discussing amongst yourselves, questions that will be provided to you. And after that, we are now going to come back into the main room where we will have one of you discuss what you discussed in your groups, respectively. So if don't be afraid to engage, because the last session where you will be discussing is going to be an engagement, So we are now going to be listening to you guys so that we can also incorporate those discussions in the next training that we are going to have next week on the 31st. So don't be afraid. And if you have any question whilst Dr. Rachel is presenting, just be typing it out in the chat and we'll definitely be able to answer it after that, or you can write it in your notebook, but you will also get a chance to raise your hand and ask any questions or just add any comments, because I know that some of you are policy advocates and you are also working in policy, so you are free to also add in a point or two based on what we will be discussing. We are also joined by our colleague, Kanto. Kanto will be helping us with our technicalities, and the breakout sessions and everything. So yeah, thank you so much and welcome to the first training ever, a very important training, I must add. And I will now welcome my colleague, Dr. Rachel Mkandawire, to take it away. Dr. Rachel, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that wonderful, beautiful introduction. You've set the standards too high for me. So if I fail, we fail together. Having said that, we also have our partners in the room, or Kudakwashe Watetepa, who is the lead policy and youth officer from SADC. We also have Kibathi. Kuda will help with facilitating after the breakout sessions. Before wasting much of your time, I will switch off my video because the internet is really not good. But I would like us to make this engagement as interactive as possible. And if you have any thoughts, anything, you need to post them on the chat. As a preamble, we are going to explore on how young people like you can actively engage in agricultural processes, in agriculture and policy processes, not just understand them, but also how to influence them. So as I said, we want this to be as interactive as much as it can be. And I would like you to continue to share your thoughts in the chat. But before we go further, what comes into your mind when you hear the word policy? You can post something on the chat.
Sorry, Dr. Rachel, to come in. Is it only on my side? Because I can't see the presentation, or not yet.
No, the presentation is here.
Yes, I can also see it from my side.
Oh, okay, so it's only on my side. Cool.
I want to check with you what comes into your mind when you hear the word policy. Muko, what's on the chat?
There is nothing yet in the chat. I just there's just a greeting from Montfort Kadudu saying good afternoon. Nothing
Okay.
yet. Guys, you can please paste your answer in the chat.
So before we go deeper into into trying to understand where you are with the word policy, I would like to share the training objectives. By the end of this training, we would like you to have a clear understanding of what policy is and why it is important and how it works. You also learn how policies are developed, mainly through what is called the policy cycle and who is involved in that process, who is affected, which is the part that looks at policy stakeholders. And also help you understand as young people how you can engage in policy, how you can influence decisions, not just observe them. And importantly, for you to be able to apply what you learn into real challenges in agriculture, whether it's climate change, pest, markets, or access to inputs, just to mention a few. So from the chart, there are some things some interesting responses. We have a response from Andrew, which says it's a set of rules or guidelines governing a body or institute of government. Somebody also said a set of rules or guidelines. Rita also says a set of guidelines or rules. Looks like everybody is on the same page. Any governing set of standards to drive any objective or goal. That is really, really impressive. Looks like we are starting somewhere. And also, as a matter of principle, everybody has some policies. Each one of us has some policies. You'd find that even in households, we have some policies. There are some parts of chicken that it's only the dad that eats them. There are also some types of food in the household that only a child is allowed to eat. Those are family policies, quote unquote. But then, why does policy matter? Policy is not something that is abstract. It directly affects people's lives. And in the interest of this conversation, it directly affects agriculture. When there are issues in agriculture, it directly impacts on life. It impacts on food accessibility, inflation. It also touches on malnutrition, which is the health of the people. So policies do not act on an abstract realm. They directly affect people's lives. So, for example, in agriculture, policies would determine what inputs farmers can access. They would determine whether fertilizers are subsidized or determine whether pesticides should be allowed or not. Or they also determine where young people can access loans to have them be participants of agricultural food systems. At the bigger level, policies are critical for addressing major challenges. Now we are in the era of climate change. How do we use policies in agriculture to respond to this ever-changing climate? And also when we talk about improving agriculture, we are also really talking about improving policies. And importantly, these policies not only affect other people, they affect livelihoods, especially livelihoods of farmers and young people like you who are involved in the agriculture industry, in food systems, who are the backbone of production as far as agriculture is concerned. So having said that, can you share us an example of a policy that affects farmers in your community where you're coming from? We'll have a 1 minute pause just to respond to that. But then, also let's clarify something. There is always a confusion between policy and politics. What is the difference between policy and politics? Most of you answered very well when it came to policy. You say it's a set of rules, it's a set of guidelines, but it is not only a set of guidelines, it also looks into what should be done, what needs to be done. It also focuses on solutions and actions of problems. It guides decisions. I saw some of the comments on the chat that a set of guidelines that help to guide what needs to be done in agriculture. It focuses on solutions and what actions should be taken to solve those problems. That's policy. For example, if a government of South Africa or government of Zambia decides to provide input subsidies to farmers like fertilizer and seed, they are solving a problem of hunger or food security to address food security situation in the country. But when it comes to politics, politics, on the other hand, is about who decides and how those decisions are made. It is a power issue, a power relational issue. It focuses on power and influence. Who makes these rules? It also focuses on negotiations. It involves power, it involves influence, it involves negotiations. Power is the one who allows the policy to be tabled or the policy to be implemented. But when it comes to negotiation, it is us that usually are impacted, that need to negotiate, to look into, to tell the people in power, to tell the politicians that we need this policy to be tackled, we need this policy to be tabled, we need this policy to be implemented. So in most cases, even if we have a good policy idea, politics will determine whether that idea is accepted, whether that idea is going to be funded, and also whether that idea is going to be implemented. So this is why an understanding of what policy and policy options and also understanding politics is important, because you need good ideas, but you also need to know how decisions are made. But you also have to know how to negotiate so that the politics, the policy, the politics that is happening do not influence the policies that are good for everybody or the policies that need to be tabled for things to move or for livelihoods to improve. Maybe we can go back on the chart and look at the question that was asked earlier. What's on the chart? Is there anything worth sharing?
Yes, on the chart, should I start from the beginning or should I just select
you can pick the last three in the
okay.
interest of time.
Okay, so we have Clara Sanga who said a policy is a set of rules, guidelines, or principles that people or organizations follow to make decisions and take actions. And we have Chikondi who's saying that a policy is basically a direction setting tool, whether in government, a school, or a business, which is meant to solve problems, create order, and guide how things should be done. And we have Juma who says that it is a set of guidelines are set to govern a certain project implementation. And the last one, we have Dora, who says that it is an official statement by a government to address a public issue.
Okay. So there was a question on, could you give an example of a policy that affects farmers in your community? Did we get any response to that effect?
Yes, we have responses. We have Dinah who says that in Malawi, a subsidy program for farm inputs that targets smallholder farmers who have at least 1 acre of land for agriculture. And we have Pauline who said that in Kenya, there was a bill that was proposed of not to share indigenous seeds. Does this follow under policy or politics?
Thank you so much. Those are very, very good examples of policies. Actually, for Pauline's question, it also touches on politics. It touches on politics, but it also touches on policy. So most cases, if this one falls on both sides. You have farmers sharing indigenous seeds, because just the act of sharing, it is an issue of access. It means that issues of access to seed within the farming community needs to be addressed. Probably the farmers are sharing because the other person, the other farmer or the farmer that they know of does not have. But then the politics come in, because most of the times you have corporations within the countries that are producing certified seed that requires the farmer to buy seed every year, especially in maize, like hybrid seed. So when the politics where the politics comes in is that politicians usually look at the interest of the corporations, not at the interest of the farmers. So that Kenyan example can fall on both sides, where farmers are not able to access seed, but even for the farmers where they have a solution where they are sharing, it is not allowed, because maybe there is an influence somewhere from corporation talking about companies like Sidico or companies like Syngenta preventing the farmers to share seed, blaming it on corporate issues or copyright issues. It becomes the politics of the day. So that is something that was an important example that you raised. There is also another example which says in Uganda, the national seed policy, it focuses on strengthening formal and informal seed systems to improve the quality of seed depending on locality. Okay, having said that, do you think good policies always get implemented? Why or why not? I'll let you have that on the chat, respond to that on the chat. So there are different types of policies. We have regulatory policies. Regulatory policies, these ones usually they are mainly looking at controlling behavior control. For example, rules on pesticides or rules on pesticide use or food safety standards. Government can say that from now onwards, this country will not allow DDT to be used in horticulture. It is changing the behavior pattern of farmers in the way that they perceive pesticides to change to alternative pesticides. You can also have food safety standards. Maybe a government would say, from now onwards, we can no longer use plastics. We'll be using cardboard boxes because of the environment or because of plastic residues, which later on affect the health of human health. Those are regulatory policies. They aim at behavioral change. Then we have distributive policies. These ones usually provide benefits or services. You are looking at, for example, you're looking at policies like subsidies, where government provides inputs to smallholder farmers to improve access, to improve services. It's like a social service provided to particular beneficiaries. Agriculture support programs, extension, those are distributive policies. Then you have redistributive policies. These ones, they usually promote fairness by reallocating resources. So, for example, in South Africa or Zimbabwe, I can give you an example of land reform programs. maybe land belonged to a certain group of people. But then with time, you realize that you're creating a lot of people that are disadvantaged and that do not have access to their land. So redistributive policies come in to improve fairness and also to improve equality. Most of gender issues, gender policies, they also aim at redistributive policies. So for example, in an institution where you say, if you want government support, we need four young people to be part and parcel of the admin of the board, or we need women to be part of the board. That is redistributive or fairness by reallocating resources. We can also look at, so for example, I can give an example from some countries where university education is based on quota, so that there is equitable access to education, not have one particular region or one particular district dominate access into university. That is also redistributive. They are making rules fair. Then we also have constituents policies. These ones create or reorganize institutions. So for example, food standards or National Roads Authority or National Agriculture Marketing Board, it helps to reorganize or establish standards within the institution. As an example, to just briefly interact, can you think of a policy in your country and what type is it? What do you think that type is? Just before we go further, I would like us to go back to the questions and see if there are any reactions to the previous slide on, do you think good policies always get implemented and why not? Why or why not? We have Natasha Chingori who says, usually good policies are not implemented, but most are to benefit a small interested group at the expense of the majority. We have good policies, but implementation is poor. For example, subsidies, the actual target population do not get it, and mostly very slow distribution. We have many politicians are responsible for developing policies often have strong ties to business interests and are sometimes driven by personal gain, which can lead to corruption. But we also have some policies which say, Herbert Bayo, who says policies are getting better but not effective enough in practice. Yeah, I think we can stop here and then proceed. If anything, we'll go back and review. So the last question is, can you think of a policy in your country and what type of policy it is? Going to the next slide, we are now going to look at policy frameworks. Before policies are developed, they are guided by what we call policy frameworks. And policy frameworks are broader agreements or are broader guidelines that help shape how policies are designed. They usually exist at different levels. For example, they usually exist at global, continental, and national. So for example, I don't know if you were in that webinar where we talked about AAYS, African Agribusiness Youth Strategy. That one is like a framework at continental level. For those of you that are working in biodiversity, we have like the Sendai framework. Those are policies that are working at global level. We also have frameworks like SDGs. Those are global, those are working at global level. So mostly policies have to feed, the policies that we make, they have to feed into a broader framework. The one that when we talk about fitting into broader framework is where we talk about alignment, that the policies that you make, they need to align with the policies that are happening at the national, with policies that are happening at the continental, and also global. They need to contribute to the ideas or the visions that is being established at the national, regional, continental, and global level. So for example, at global level, I think I've already mentioned, we have the SDGs. At continental level, we have the AU Agenda 2063. Then at national level, we have national agriculture policies. I just skipped, but also at regional level, we have like the regional agriculture policies. So these frameworks help to ensure that policies are aligned and are working towards a common goal. The next thing that we are going to talk about is policy, is the stakeholders. Stakeholders are people or groups who are involved in or are affected by a policy. You may not be part of the people that are writing the policy or that are coming up with the policy or are contributing to the formulation of the policy, but you could be one of the people that would be affected. You are a stakeholder. You don't necessarily have to work in a government, or you have to be even people that consume, even you as an agriculture experts or as people working in the agriculture industry. You could be at a certain level of hierarchy within the stakeholders. But even those that are not working in agriculture are also stakeholders, because whatever is happening within the agriculture industry, they are affected. Those are stakeholders. So stakeholders are people or groups who are involved in or affected by the policies. We have state actors. These are people that are working in government institutions like ministries and agencies. Then we also have non-state actors. These include farmers, youth, NGO, private sector, researchers, non-state actors. You may not make policies, but you also can influence what policy is. And you also can influence because the policy affects you. So you are also a stakeholder. So understanding your role as a stakeholder in the agriculture, the agri-food system, it is very, very important, because policy is not made by one person. It involves different actors, it involves different players, it also involves different people with different interests. There were also already examples prior which says not all policies are involved because there are other people that are interested. Yeah, it is because people have different interests. So at the end of the day, we need to make sure that the people that are affected by them, they get the best from the policy that is being formulated. They get the best from the policies that are being formulated. So the guiding question from this is, which stakeholder group do you belong to, and how can you influence policy? And also, before I go into the next slide, when we are looking at stakeholders that influence policy, there are different categories. You have primary stakeholders, the ones that are directly involved in policy formulation. So for example, if we have a policy in the seed sector, you have people that are seed producers. You have Ministry of Agriculture, who is helping coordinating access to seed. People that are directly involved in seed. People that are directly involved in that particular policy, those are called primary stakeholders. Then you have secondary stakeholders. These are the ones that are on the second tier. Then you also have tertiary stakeholders. These are the ones that may not really have much to do with formulation, but they are affected. These are usually like the farmers. So I would like to hear from you. Which stakeholder group do you think you belong to? And why do you think you belong to that stakeholder group? And also, how can you influence policy on that? Going into the next part, we are going to talk about the policy cycle. Policies don't just appear. They go through a structured process called the policy cycle. In policy cycle, you start with the agenda setting, which involves where problems are identified and brought to attention. So, for example, you see that people, when they eat vegetables, they are just vomiting, they are just conversing. You know that there is something wrong with the maybe pesticide residue. And you bring this to the attention of people that are supposed to handle the situation. Or there was a situation in Zambia where livestock, animals were just dying after consuming maize or consuming something. That is the problem. You then bring attention to the problem. Then the second part is the policy formulation, where different solutions are developed and analyzed. So, for example, in policy formulation, in the pesticide situation, you do think about stopping application of pesticides. You think of use of alternative biological control pesticides, or you would think about organic pesticides. These are the different solutions that need to be developed and analyzed. You need to look at the cost-benefit analysis of the proposed solutions that you are thinking about. And an important step happens here at decision making. This is where policymakers choose the best option from the alternatives. From the solutions that you propose, you need to come up with something that is the best. Sometimes the best for Blantyre, maybe the best for Gauteng. I'll give an example for South Africa. The best solution for Gauteng may also not be the best solution for Limpopo. Or the best solution for Malawi may not be the best solution for Zambia. That is also why area-specific policy recommendations are needed to address a particular problem. There is sometimes in coming up with the solution, there is no one size that fit everybody. So keep in mind that. And then we move to implementation, where policy is put into action, where the policy has to be implemented. So, for example, Africa, East and Southern Africa, has been battling with food insecurity, and malnutrition. So, implementation would involve providing subsidy program, providing training programs in agriculture, improving youth skills. These are actions leading to solving the problem of food insecurity in East and Southern Africa, just as an example. And finally, we have policy review. This is where we assess whether the policy is working, what needs to change, and the process is continuous. It keeps evolving, it keeps improving. Sometimes we may just call it, let's say, food security. People may not have access. Then you realize that, people have access, but it's not nutritious enough. Then you bring in an element of nutrition. Then you realize that, no, it's not just a nutrition issue, it's also a food safety issue. You realize that, okay, we need to improve standards. People are taking a lot of, the food that they're eating has a lot of pesticides. You bring attention to that. Then maybe sometimes you realize that it is not just a pesticide issue. It is also a market. These people are producing, we have improved nutrition, we have improved the safety standards, but the marketability, then you start addressing markets. You start making good roads, you start connecting farmers with standard setting officers. The policy cycle is evolving depending on the changing situation that the world is in. So, from your understanding, from what we have briefly discussed, which stage of the policy cycle do you think is most important? Maybe we can go back to the previous question just to see what where you think you are as far as stakeholder groups are concerned. Where do you think you belong as far as stakeholder and the policy influence is? Muko, please help us as always.
Okay, so I'm just gonna quickly scroll down. We are in the question of a policy in your country and what type it is, right?
Maybe we go straight to which stakeholder group do you belong to and how can you
Okay.
influence policy?
Okay. For that one, we have Tisunge Piri, who says that she falls into farmer and private sector group. She says she can influence the policy following the challenges being faced within her sector and raise actions to the stakeholders involved in the policy actions. And we also have Justice, who says that I fall into NGOs. We influence policy through advocating and lobbying policymakers and different stakeholders on certain policy issues. Chiku Matendo says that she falls under the youth group. Nowadays, youth is everything, and I can influence the policy by engaging people who are related to the main policy. Example is agricultural policy, and there is a need to be engaged there. And Julian lastly says that as a youth, one should work collaboratively with the youth group. There is strength in number. I believe to influence policies, one should familiarize himself or herself with the policies in their countries. What has been done to these policies? Are there any gaps that failed to implement this? And people can learn from this.
Thank you so much. And then we are going to unpack each of the steps in the policy. Okay.
Can I also just add, sorry, before we close, I wanna add the one that was responded by Tipelele. She said that she is a youth and academic stakeholder. I could in research and youth perspectives to agri-food system discussions, and I can influence policy by providing evidence-based research, participating in consultations, and advocating for youth inclusive agricultural policies.
Thank you so much. So on agenda setting is the stage where problems are identified and brought to the attention of decision makers. So you identify by looking at what is happening, who is affected, why is it happening. You mainly have to use data and evidence. You cannot just say dogs are dying. What if they have been poisoned by somebody? So you really need to understand what the issue is. Setting agenda is about deciding which issues get attention. But also, like when there is public pressure, there is evidence, and there is political priorities, you find that some policies, the agenda is set quickly. For example, I can give an example of myself from Malawi. Politicians, if they scrape off fertilizer subsidy, they are not going to be voted for because they know that they have taken out one of the core issues that affect them. Fertilizer is very expensive for the most part. So it is important to understand that not all problems automatically also become policy issues. There are many challenges in agriculture, but only a few get priorities. An example is about the youth. We have always been saying that youth are left out because in the past, there were always these people that just looked at other interests, not really focusing on young people, forgetting that people will get old, you will need people to replace, people need to be upgraded, people need to provide capacity. So policy process is influenced, the agenda setting is influenced by several factors: public awareness, media attention, political priorities, and also available evidence. For example, when there is a major pest outbreak, it quickly becomes a priority because it is a situation where it threatens food security, it threatens livelihoods. But also you find that some issues that are long-term, for example, soil degradation, for example, deforestation, they may not receive the immediate attention because they are less visible. So take note of that. as a part of the interactive session of this, what issues in your community do you think deserve more public attention? And also, what issues in your community do you think are not getting the attention that they are supposed to get? Then the second part is on problem identification, also known as problem prioritization. Sorry, I'm lost with the way I've done my slides. So in the problem identification is one of the most critical steps in policy advocacy. So if you don't really define your problem, it can lead into ineffective solutions. That is why, as a stakeholder or as somebody who is influencing policy, you must clearly understand what is happening. You must clearly understand what exactly is the problem, what is happening, who is affected, why is it happening. It is also important for you to use evidence such as data, research, and real life experiences. So, for example, most of you have seen that when we are presenting issues among youth, we always say Africa is a young continent because we know that there is evidence that people under 35, they make a 60% of the population in East and Southern Africa. When you are advocating for policy, you need to provide data. So for example, you can say 5 animals ate maize at this field. All of them died. You need to provide data, you need to provide the evidence to show that there is a problem and the problem is here because of ABCD. Once the problem has been identified, you need to prioritize it. You need to prioritize. Not all problems can be solved at once. There are so many issues that are happening in agriculture, but you have to decide issues that are most important. For example, the severity of the problem, number of people that are affected, the agency, available resources. We do know that degradation, soil degradation is a big issue, right? But we also, but we also know that when people eat certain foods, they die. So as a policy specialist, you need to look at issues that you prioritize. You prioritize and the ones that requires the urgency and the most attention. You also have to understand that there is politics and policies. When you do problem prioritization, make sure that it captures the attention of the people that need it. So you can't be wanting to address a soil degradation immediately, quickly, when you have people that are dying of hunger and malnutrition. So you really need to prioritize your issues effectively. So in the policy prioritization and problem identification, evidence is very, very important. Providing evidence is very important. It helps you to understand the problem. It helps you to understand the problem clearly and to support decision making. Evidence can come in the form of research, it can come in form of statistics, it can come in form of lived experiences. Those need to be provided to help in the decision making. And when you provide evidence, it is also easy for one to identify policy options, also predict possible impacts, and also improve policy effectiveness. So that is very, very important. The next phase of the policy cycle is the policy formulation. In policy formulation, you are developing solutions and policy options. You are identifying strategies and actions. These are based on the evidence that you collected. They should also be based on stakeholder input. I think for most of you are able to understand. So for example, when a government tables a particular problem, there are people that complain that we were not consulted and these do not reflect the views or the experiences that we have. Stakeholder input is very important. When you are influencing policy, what other people say is very important to guide you into not leaving them, not excluding them when you're developing solutions, but also it prevents you from developing solutions. They say that something for us, something done without us is something done against us. When you are developing solutions, you develop solutions that should affect the people that are affected by the problem. If you leave them out on stakeholder input, it becomes a problem. Then you have to compare alternative solutions to prepare for decision making. I think I have done that. Then on decision making, you select the best policy option. This is based on evidence. This is also based on feasibility, resources, political priorities. You probably might have seen that when they are doing before they implement a particular project, they do a feasibility, or before they establish a market somewhere, they do a feasibility study if that can work. Those are part of the evidence that helps to inform policy decision. And it helps, it involves government leaders, policymakers. It also helps to bridge the gap between formulation and implementation. Feasibility also helps you to fine tune. So for example, you planned on targeting 20 people, and then you realize that feasibility that no, this problem is not just about 20 people, we need 50. Or you realize this issue does not only affect women, it does not only affect girls, it also affects boys. That's where decision making helps in formulation and bridging the gap between formulation and implementation. I think I did so many slides on that. Then we go to policy implementation. In policy implementation, it is where policies are put into action. This involves government agencies, institutions, and sometimes private sector and NGOs to really put the action, everything that was planned from policy formulation, policy setting, agenda setting, policy formulation, decision making into action. So, for example, we talked about food security and subsidies. Subsidies are part of implementation. Training young people into agriculture issues is part of policy. Is part and parcel of food security policy actions on policy implementation. And and successful implementation requires funding, it requires trained personnel, coordination, and clear responsibilities. So one of the things that is a problem in Africa is that you find that you have good policies that are well formulated, that have been passed, that have been launched, but implementation does not take place. When you have policies that are not implemented, it is just daydreaming. So policy implementation determines whether the policies succeed or the policies fail. And also, as you young people, I think we talked a lot during the African Agribusiness Youth Strategy that in policy, most of the issues that affect young people, they are just ambitions because they are not being implemented. That's why policies need to be put into action to materialize what we envisioned during the policy formulation stage. The next phase is the policy monitoring, and the policy monitoring is about tracking progress during implementation. It also helps us to understand whether activities are being carried out as planned. You can use indicators, data collection, reports to measure progress. For example, when we are looking at youth one of the programs that is happening in the Eastern African community is they are kind of like establishing a database that if we implement this project, how many young people are employed? Also, what do we call employment? When we say someone is employed, what does that mean? They need to have a clear and a trackable way to monitor the progress. So to monitor progress of implementation. So use of indicators. Monitoring also helps you to identify problems early and make adjustments. So for example, you can see that, okay, this problem was supposed to benefit women. But you realize that when you introduce money into it, it's not even benefiting women, it's benefiting men more than the women themselves. So there is also need to really backtrack and look at where the problem is. It also ensures that resources are being used effectively and goals are being met. Or some entries in the chart suggested that the policies are there, but they mainly go into people's pockets. It's mainly for personal gain. When there is proper policy monitoring, you are able to see these things and tie the bolts and the knots. Yeah. So the last part is the policy review or policy evaluation. I don't know. So in terms of policy review, this is the final stage where we assess the overall impact of the policy. We look at whether the objectives were achieved and what changes occurred. Evaluation also uses data, it uses feedback and analysis to determine the success or failure of the project. It also helps us learn lessons and improve future policies. At this juncture, I would like to invite Moko to guide us through the breakout sessions. I will join you later. I have to rush into another meeting, but I will come back. If there are any other questions, I'll come back to respond to those. Yeah. Moko and Puda, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rachel. This was such an interesting training session, and we learned a lot. I learned a lot myself, and I know that other people also like got to grab a thing or two. So thank you so much. We understand that you have another meeting to attend. It means that we'll see you in the next training next week.
Okay.
So now
Kanto, sorry, before I go, Kanto, you have this slide, right? Please share the presentation from your end.
Noted.
Thank you, Kanto. So now we will be going into breakout sessions, which Kanto will be guiding us in. Kanto, you can help me with this.
Yes, so everyone, I will post on the chat the discussion that you will be in. So there will be, you will organize who will be facilitating and who will be presenting back. So you will be redirectly sent to your respective room. Am I missing another instruction, Muko? Is that right?
Yes, this is it. But I think you, me, and Kuda will join those breakout sessions. So I think maybe you can guide us, or okay, are we joining the breakout session 1 or 2 or 3 so that we don't have two of us in one of the rooms?
All right, sure.
Yeah, thank you so much. And then after that, we'll come back to the main room to discuss. I think we should be done by 3:30. Is that okay, Kanto, if we spend 30 minutes in each breakout room?
Yes, correct.
Yes, so we will be in the breakout sessions for 30 minutes, and then the 30 minutes after that, we have to come back to the main room so that we can discuss, and then we close off with our session.
All right, thank you. There will be 5 breakout rooms going now. Kindly join. Please join your breakout room. It should appear there. Click on join. Thank you. Click on join, everyone. If you haven't yet, please click on join. Ambrose, Panele, Blessing, Cleopatra, please click on join. Cleopatra, please join the session, breakout session. Ambrose, please join the breakout session.
Um, there were people contributed, and the problems that people said that affect their communities, like one said, problem with like say limited market access and the high post-harvest losses in horticulture. And this problem affects young farmers, smallholder horticulture producers, agripreneurs. Why is it happening? Poor market linkages, lack of storage processing facilities, price instability, and lack of business scale. And others also said that their problem is like Gianni Sanando said there's poor infrastructure, especially roads, making some areas inaccessible. Who is affected? Farmers in remote communities and consumers relying on agricultural produce. And why is it happening? High cost of infrastructure development and low prioritization by government. Another problem from one of the members, Mbewe, said that the problem is the inefficiencies in the Farmer Input Support Program, FISIP. Who is affected? Farmers, primarily agro dealers, traders, and broader economy, broader graduate economy like secondary. Why is it happening? Delays, limited input sharing of inputs, and market distortion caused by the program. And Mariam also said that the problem it's about in her community, the problem is about low dietary diversity due to over-reliance on staple food, e.g. maize and rice, who is affected households and communities with limited nutrition options. Why is it happening? Production and consumption patterns focus on stable crops rather than diversified foods. So prioritization for Nogafira said now, rising youth unemployment, podcast offers quick income opportunities. Consequences, if ignored, continued losses, low incomes, youth disengagement, and increased poverty. For the problem of where Jill Sawanda said uh, about poor infrastructures, he said, why now? Infrastructure is critical for agricultural productivity and market access. Question says if ignored, restricted production, limited market participation. Mbewe on the FISIP, It said, why now? FISIP is central to agriculture productivity by currently undermining sector growth. QuemSec says if ignored, continued low productivity, weak private sector, and participation. Mariam, on the nutritional liability on stable food. Why now? Nutrition and food security are immediate concerns. QuemSec says if ignored, malnutrition, poor health outcomes, and continued dependency on limited food sources. On the stakeholders, Noah said that the key stakeholders are farmers, NGOs, agribusiness, station workers, financial institutions, and government. And influencers, the policymakers, large buyers, development partners, and farmers organization, and the farmers themselves. For Juliana, on the key stakeholders says that the farmers, consumers, government, influencers, government institutions, and farmers are advocating for infrastructure development. Mbewe said the key stakeholders are farmers, agro dealers, trade, government, private sector, influencers, government, policymakers, and institutions managing FISIP. Mariam on the nutrition said that the stakeholders are farmers, consumers, nutritionists, government, NGOs, influencers, government, and development organizations promoting nutrition-sensitive agriculture. So on the policy thinking, Noel said that the existing policy, there's an gradual youth policy in agribusiness in Malawi. Gaps are that weak implementation, poor infrastructure, limited youth financing, and weak markets. Need policy, youth-focused agribusiness support, improved market access, investment in storage, processing, tailored financing. Whilst Julian Sonando said that likely exists but difficult to access and implement effectively. Gaps, limited prioritization and implementation of the infrastructure development. Need policy, increased investment and prioritization and rural infrastructure, especially roads. So whilst Mbewe said existing policy, farmer input program FISIP, gaps, inefficiencies, delays, market distortion. Need policy says a reform of FISIP to support productivity while enabling private sector growth. And Mariam said that there is likely an existing policy, but the gaps are that limited efforts on diversity, nutrition, sensitive agriculture. Need policy, promotion of diverse crop production and nutrition focused agricultural policies. This is what we discussed. Sorry that I was going one by one, but this information is well put when tabulated, and I can share the feedback to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Noel, for the presentation. I think it was quite a detailed presentation of what they discussed. And just to note, I think they've highlighted just 4 problems from each one of them. There were 4 in their group. They've touched on the horticulture post-harvest losses. They've touched on the issue of poor infrastructure, which is an issue within the region. And they also touched on inefficiencies in input supply for all farmers generally. Then lastly, they touched on low dietary diversity due to overly reliance on maize or other staple crops. So I think for the next group, for us to benefit more, if the problems that No Kafela and the team have identified, you might not need to repeat, you just fly over them, but focus on new problems that you have identified. Over to the next group. I think Moko, we can go to the group that we were in.
Group 2?
Yeah, group 2.
Okay,
You
thank
can
you.
come through.
Group 2,
Yeah.
we were 8, and I'm Munyole Andrew from Uganda. And we discussed, we zeroed down to 1 for us to understand better, to one challenge that was from Soban. And the challenge was that there is lack of financial services for the smaller holder farmers to do production in these communities. Farmers have land, but we realize that the people from urban setups are the ones who are coming to cultivate from these lands, and they leave these farmers for do insecure. So they are the smaller holder farmers who are being affected in this community. And now, why is the problem happening? There are no clear structures in the agriculture investment portfolio. For example, structures of the outgrowers schemes and structures, the structures of how to do on how to do aggregated marketing and all that. And then why is the problem important to address now? Because of the food insecurity in these communities, that too much food insecurity because they have the land but they're not cultivating on it. This has later led to poverty in these communities. Since these people now, every penny they get, they are spending it on food. This has later led to high levels of school dropout because the parents have no money to pay for school fees for their children. Now, for them to get what to eat, they have resorted to deforestation, such that they can make charcoal and make some money out of it. And this has later led to climate change and global warming in these areas. If this challenge is not addressed, there is a total huge failure to reach the SDG goals. There will be sharp rise in the death. There is more unemployment, rise in the crime rates, drug abuse, and failure of the total systems. This community has turned out to be unruly because they are not going to school, they are unemployed. Now, more killings for them to get what to eat, they have resorted into self-killings. And now, what are the stakeholders engaged in this? The government, NGOs, funders, private sector, and the foundations. And we are agreed that the government fully has the responsibility to influence this issue. We have also, but also there are some existing policies. For example, the agriculture input policy and the agricultural commercialization policy, the AGICOM, where the government is giving out loans to invest in commercial agriculture. But we realize that there is something that's missing in these policies. The government approaches, and we found out that through the discussion that the government is interested in numbers, but not the impact on ground. But also the other issue is farmers accessing loans. Farmers are accessing the financial services. It takes long, and by the time this farmer gets the money, maybe the season has gone, but also maybe the money has also the loan has also high interest rate, and the farmers fail. Those ones who try sometimes fail to pay back the loans, and the repercussions follow. Now, the kind of policies that we agreed that can come in here, financial inclusion policies or models that can fit the smaller holder farmers, that are accessible, that are affordable, and that can be visible to all smallholder farmers. But also the other policies, the government during the CADAP, I think Kampala Declaration, where they said that 10% should go to agriculture. So the policy must be enforced that 10% to be put into agriculture to have enough resources, because this community would be supported by fertilizers, by seeds, and by all other inputs. Also with the technical know-how, expertise, extension officers to guide on the production. But all this facilitated by the government through the 10% rule by the CADAP X. So that's what we discussed as group 2. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. It was quite detailed. Your group did a fantastic job to look at the financial services, and I really like the deep dive that you did, even looking at the current continental frameworks and how you relate your problem to that. We can move to group 3. Kando, you're roving around. You were not in group 3.
No, I monitored almost all the group.
All the group. Okay. Group 3
So
can
I'm
come
not too
through.
sure.
Thank you, Kuda. I don't know whether I was in group 3. I've forgotten my number.
Okay, no, that's fine. You can go ahead, Tisung.
In group 3, we were almost 4 of us. Others dropped due to network problems. So the first problem came from Cleopatra from South Africa, which said that there's limited access to nutritious and affordable food. Okay, food insecurity, which is characterized by limited access to nutritious and food and affordable food. Who is affected? Mostly affected are low-income household, children, and school learners. Why is this problem happening? The prevalence of food insecurity stems from several factors, include high levels of unemployment and poverty, which severely restrict the purchasing power. Concurrently, rising also food prices and also cost of living. Prioritization. Why is this problem important to address now? Because the prompt action can simultaneously enhance food access and improve livelihood. And the consequences, if not addressed, involves worsening of malnutrition, especially among children, and increased risk of chronic diseases, and also perpetuating the cycle of poverty and inequality. Who are the stakeholders? These include local households and communities, small-scale farmers, backyard gardeners, education institutions such as schools and feeding schemes. Who had the power to influence? The government and local municipalities in collaboration with non-governmental organizations possess the authority and capacity to significantly influence and mitigate this issue. There existing policy, yes, South Africa has existing policy pertaining to food security and school nutrition support. What's missing this? Despite existing policies, there are critical gaps. These include limited access to nutritious food, particularly at the community level, and lack of indigenous crop utilization for nutrition purposes, and insufficient youth involvement in food systems. Furthermore, there's often limited awareness of these existing policies. Second, it was Malawi, presented by Kwatu, and also I'm part of it. The second was limited access to farm inputs, e.g. fertilizers and seed, and also soil degradation. Who is affected? Mostly smallholder farmers, and the problem, if worsened, is worse. The problem is worsened because often people lack diversified income streams that tend to remain reliant on a single crop. So even if this is performing well on the market, it can lead to over-reliance on specific inputs and practices that contribute to soil degradation. Um, why is it crucial to address it? Because agriculture is the major source of livelihood and a significant portion of our population. And what consequences, if not addressed, it means the food security will become a significant and escalating concern. Who are the stakeholders? Farmers, government, input suppliers, and innovators. Who had the power to influence this issue? Both farmers and government. Yes, there are relevant policies in place, but a significant gap is that the awareness of these existing policies is limited, and among farming communities and other pertinent stakeholders. Additionally, there is a need for policies that support the promotion of organic fertilizer to address soil health and input access. If no, what kind of policy is needed? As policies existing, this question is not that, sorry, but there's a need of promoting organic fertilizer, which is currently being done, but also raise the awareness of farmers to practice this policy. Okay, in Tanzania, there was a problem which has been addressed, like limited access to market. Most affected are farmers all the way from materials to access the buyers. Okay, I think I'm lost. The other side, I'm lost. I had a lot of noise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tisunge, for the feedback. Yes, we picked a few, but also I think you highlighted to some of the problems that have been identified. That is the market, and also some post-harvest losses there. I think we can go to group 4. Group 4, you can come in and give us your feedback. Group 4, or we can even go to group 5.
Yeah, thank you very much. For group 5, I think I can step in. And yes, some of our conversation was like somehow addressed, but let me share what we did as well.
Okay.
We just talk about different issues, which is in different countries, but there's one which is in Zimbabwe for input prices, where the inputs are like the price is going high. And yes, on another hand, it is needed for crop production, increase of productivity, but again, it is another issue. And we found that this problem, it is yes affecting the smallholder farmers on one side because they are missing the cost of production. It goes high, which affected that what they produce when it takes to market and what they have invested in. The difference looks like nothing gained from there. But on the other hand, as they say, for these fertilizer inputs we are bringing into our soil, it is affecting the consumers as well. That's why we mentioned that the smallholder farmers and the consumers both, they are affected with this issue. And the reason why this problem is happening, one, we all focus to, we have seen that all the farmers, they have that focus of like increase the production. But again, there is a need to address again our production and the health concern, because what we produce, is it healthier or something? That's why this problem, yeah, everyone is want to increase the production, but again, we need to see, even if it is those input that they are pricing, but production issue is that there is. Well, okay. Why is the problem important yes, we need to address this problem. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Can go
Oh,
ahead.
okay. Yeah, we need to address this problem because number one, we need to see the smallholder farmers need to see the value of their activity, because if they are getting input at high price, later on they will be like losing time for nothing. And again, we need to challenge that system of like bringing in more fertilizer or other inputs. We challenge the healthier one instead. Then, yeah, consequences are there, both hand. Some, if it is increasing, like if we promote this one for fertilizer inputs, if the price is going high, the consequences, number one, like everyone will give up this, like agriculture sector says that, okay, everything is expensive and we are not getting anything, which cause the employability issues on another hand. But on another note, we need to promote the composting fertilizer as well. The stakeholder which are involved, these are the smallholder farmers, the supplier, and the NGOs, because these different initiatives coming in, they need also to sit with farmers and challenge, like share the experience, share what can work instead of sticking to the productivity, and they change the mindset against thinking to they can produce a smaller quantity but healthier, and they sell it to expensive prices, if I say. And yeah. Who has the power to, yeah, of course, the governments need to be involved so that they can enforce this one. Yeah, policies are there. There are different policies. Talking about inputs, mainly the fertilizers. But again, there's a need to review those such, and they put some restrictions that to let farmers not stick to what can make their productivity high instead of like thinking about who will consume this one. What is not working well, I think it is to sit with farmers and we challenge them to think beyond the production, and they think to who will consume this one, even if the production is high. But again, who's going to consume, and what contribution are we doing to that person? I think there's a need of awareness and conversation with farmers. If not, what kind of policy? Okay. I think we need to review what is in the house in terms of the policy instead. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Thomas. At least you were quite detailed there. But as we wrap up, I think this training was beneficial to everyone, where Dr. Rasho had to take us through on the theory part. Then we had to break into groups and also sort of do the practical things relating to what we see from our communities that we come from. And yeah, it was a very good training for us. I also learned a lot, and we also learned a
Kuda,
lot from you guys as well.
sorry to
So
cut you.
I can.
Sorry to
Hello?
cut you.
Okay.
Yes, I'm so sorry to cut you. There is one group that has not spoken, which is group 5. Procy had her hand up, so I think she wants
Okay.
to go.
No,
She
Maybe
can
in
proceed.
Group
maybe
5,
just in,
I was representing group 5 because group
It's
4
group
was not
4.
there. Yeah.
yes, group
It's group
4.
4. Okay.
Oh,
Prox, you
all right.
can
Thank
come
you very
through.
much. Yeah,
How
thank
are
you
you?
very much. My name is Percy Amongiabu from Uganda, and I'm representing Group 5. So Group 5 had Percy, Sambatra, Kalulu, and Pauline and Rita. So what is the key agricultural problem in our community? For us, we chose the problem of severe shortage of agricultural extension services, and we chose to focus in Uganda. And in Uganda, it is characterized by a ratio of 1 extension worker serving up to 1,800 farmers. So this creates a service gap where a majority of the farmers lack access to modern farming techniques, pest management, and climate smart information. And who is affected by this problem? We have smallholder farmers who are affected by the problem. And then we also have the extension officers. Why? Because these officers, we have one officer serving up to 1,800 farmers. So they face burnt out. They get stressed, and they also have high transport costs because in many African countries, farmers are in rural areas. So they have to come from, the town centers to go to the villages. So those are high transport costs. And then why is this problem happening? In Uganda, we have budget constraints because we are in a resource-constrained environment. So we have limited government funding for hiring and equipping new staff for the agriculture extension, service sector. And then we also have logistics, whereby we lack reliable transport. That's motorcycles, vehicles, and even the fuel, to run the vehicles. And like I said earlier, most of the farmers in Uganda are in rural areas. And then what is the other question? Why is the problem important to address now? Of course, across the African continent, we see that there is an increasing burden of climate change, and farmers can no longer rely on traditional calendars. They need real-time expert advice from, these extension officers to adapt. And without extension support, food security is at risk. Yes, and then what are the consequences if the problem is not addressed? We have, for example, crop yield gaps. Farmers will continue to produce far below their land potential, and then we also have a mental and being environmental degradation because farmers will continue to misuse fertilizers and pesticides due to lack of guidance from the extension officers. Then question 6 is who are the key stakeholders involved? We have, of course, the Ministry of Agriculture. We have the local government leaders. Then we also have NGOs. We have development partners like WFP, UNICEF and other development partners, even the private sector. And then question 7, who has the power to influence this issue? We have policymakers, which is largely the parliament, because they control budget allocations for, civil service recruitment. Then we also have local leaders who can mobilize community-based extension models. And for us being in a technology-driven world, we also have the telecommunications companies like MTN and Airtel, because they can be able to provide infrastructure for hybrid digital extension services to bridge the physical gap. Then question 8 is there an existing policy addressing this issue in Uganda? Yes, we have. We have what we call the National Agriculture Extension Policy that aims to have one farmer serving 500 farmers. And then question 9, if the policy is there, what is missing or what is not working? For us in Uganda, it's an implementation gap because the policy exists on paper, but funding for recruitment hasn't been matched to the growing farmer population. And then we also have the top-down approach where we have existing policies often rely on physical visits, which is and when you go to the ground, the story is very different. Get it? And then we also lack the digital integration because the physical gap is indeed wide. So if we can have policies that address the burden of extension, whereby we have digital policies like which are hybrid, whereby a farmer can access it via smartphone, via feature phone, and via toll-free number. And then number 10, the question is, if no, what kind of policy is needed? I feel like we need a multi-stakeholder extension policy whereby we have we integrate the private sector actors, the lead farmers, digital platforms into the national extension framework, rather than relying solely on the government, because it reduces the burden on the government. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Proxy. Yeah, it was quite comprehensive and detailed. Thank you for that. Just to summarize, I think the focus was on the extension problems within Uganda. Yeah, it was quite detailed. Thank you for that. Since we have run out of time, I want to thank you for the group work that you did and for the good job. Well done. Yeah. So we had the theory and the practical, and I'll hand over to Muko to give us some closing remarks for today's training. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Kuda. Thank you so much for facilitating that. Thank you so much to you guys as well. I think this was quite like a very good session and an interactive one as well. So now, without wasting any more time, I know that we are 6 minutes over our time, and I see that the number of people has dropped as well. But please, if you're still here in the meeting, just bear with us for the next 10 minutes maximum, so that we can just walk you through the feedback. So we are going to be having a feedback for this session so that the next session is even better. So this is very important. We cannot skip it at this time. Kanto, do you want to take us through this?
All right, so everyone can please scan, if you're on a phone, please scan the QR code. Otherwise, if you are on our computer, please go to mentimeter.com and type this number here. Muko, if you can type the number 5288-0574. If you are on Mentimeter, this is the number. Yeah. So I see that people are already responding. Four people. How useful you rate this training? It was informative. From 1 to 5. I will give you some 1 minute to get some general feedback from the team, from everyone. Then we go to the next question. Very insightful, formative, excellent. Helped me deeply understand the topic. From 1 to 5, some said 4, 5. So I think this gives us a good feedback. Great, they are keep coming in. All right, I'm going to the next slide since we have some responses already. All right, thank you so much. Okay, what did you gain the most from this training? Is it the understanding of policy concept or knowledge of the policy cycle, stakeholder analysis or policy advocacy skills, or practical problem solving? Okay, good, good. We can see that people are really learning on understanding policy concept today. A little bit on knowledge of the policy cycle, a little bit on practical problem solving. Thank you. We can go on the next. How confident do you feel about engaging in policy processes after this training? 1, not so confident, to 5, to be very confident. So how confident do you feel? Some are not so confident, some like, okay, I can be confident. Some are in between. We're still learning, so that's why we are here. So it's anonymous, don't worry. So it is just for us to see. All right, thank you. We're going to the next slide. What is the most useful part of the training for you? So it's an open-ended. Was it engaging with others? Was it the training on its own, knowing more about the type of policies and knowing more about what is going on in the countries? What happened? Okay, the participatory, the breakout session, team session, good. It's always good to have your fellow youth from other country, discover more. Okay, I can see that there's strong feel about team participation. Practical examples, okay. Yes, keep them coming. Okay, so I see that the youth want to participate and do practical exercise. So that can be integrated for future training, that you want to be involved, that you want to participate, because you are finding very useful the breakout session. Thank you so much. Policy cycle. So the breakout session really stand out here. That makes you work and, share more and discover more. Good. Knowing about stakeholders. All right. Okay. You can keep them coming. Dr. Rachel's presentation was very useful. Thank you. We're going to the next slide. How will you apply what you learn in a work or community? Don't say much of a sentence, but just 2-3 words. How would you like to apply what you've learned? You want to discover more what is going on in the community or in your work, or I don't want to guide you, but yes, I see there's someone saying policy advocacy. What else can you apply in your community or work with the small, with the information that you have received today? More are going. Some will do more research on the topic. Good. Evaluating current agricultural policies. We see that the youth are interested now in policies and see what is the policy, what are the policies that are involving the youth, identify problems and come up with policy that work, some recommendation there, advocacy on relevant problems, analyze situation, influencing through media, youth group of advocacy, very good there. Influencing, advocating. Engaging with smallholder farmers and different stakeholders that are involved on how they can go about addressing the issues affecting them. Excellent. Being now part of the stakeholder in policy formulation, very good initiative. All right, you can keep on typing, but we are going to the next slide. What can be improved in future training? So for us as well to help you, what do you think can be improved in future training? Please let us know. Do you want more time, more group, more of this, less of this? Keep time. Discussions to be oral. More time of engagement and discussion. Time management. Okay. The information was too much to be grasped in one session. All right. Those are all noted. Some prefer for more morning session. Okay, chat box is ineffective. Give opportunity to talk when there is opportunity to talk. All right. So do you think we need more time to separate them into different sessions? Real success stories from youth who participated in policy discussions for more knowledge sharing and experience sharing, more activities for the group. Okay, I think we have some good impression of what can be improved in terms of timing, more participation. Okay, how engaging was the training session when we asked you some questions? Was it interactive? How engaging was this training session? From 1 to 5 or 3? think there's only option from 1 to 3, so 3 will be the top in the middle. Okay, thank you. I've seen 16 people who haven't responded. Okay, for the interest of time, I will go to the next. How would you recommend this training to others? Yes, no, maybe. Yes, we have a strong yes. We have like some will be maybe. All right. In one word, how do you feel after this training? Just one word. And we end this presentation. In one word, empowered, enlightened, informed, knowledgeable. Those are some good words. Inspired, equipped. Good. I feel good. I feel good. All right. Confident, boosted. All right. Thank you, everyone. I think back to you, Muko, to officially end this training. I think we got some feedback here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kanto. And this was such a nice feedback session. Thank you so much for facilitating that. And I would like to thank everyone for sticking out through the end of the training session. This was really, really good. As you know, your words literally say, it was very knowledgeable, it was enlightening, and we are definitely equipped with knowledge around policy making and policy advocacy. So, as I said in the beginning of training, we are going to be meeting again next week, the 30th or the 31st. I forgot the date, you'll forgive me, but you have the information because it's in your emails and also your WhatsApp groups. I will also remind you in time. But before we meet for our training, I am going to give you an assignment, that is based on this training that we just had. This assignment is just going to help you further understand policy issues and policy advocacy. So I will send that to your groups, but then maybe just to give you a hint of what the assignment will be about. So you are going to identify a real agriculture challenge in your community. So basically like similar to what we did in our breakout sessions. And it can be, for example, access to inputs, markets, climate impacts, youth unemployment, and you should link it to an existing policy and outline gaps and propose 2 to 3 policy recommendations. And then you can submit a 2-pager responding to this. And this is an individual assignment, which will be really, really helpful. We would really, really appreciate if you send it. So I will send this to your emails right away and also to the WhatsApp group. But otherwise, thank you so, so much. This was so, so good to have you here. And thank you so much to Kanto who helped us throughout the training. Thank you to Dr. Rachel for the presentation. Thank you to Kuda for also facilitating. And with that being said, we will see each other next week. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
Bye.
we
you.
will share the
Thank you, guys.
presentation with you as
Okay,
well.
bye.
Yes, we will share the